Okay, first and foremost, I would like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'asham, Yahushai, Ba'asham, Ruchal Kodash, and double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Today we're going to get into this video, right, where, pretty much this devil, they're trying to create a nuclear reactor, to send to the moon. And in this video, you're going to see the reasons, because they're going to keep being asked, like, why? And you're going to see the reasons that they give. Basically was, there's a race between them and China and Russia, how they're going to need pretty much energy to inhabit like the moon, for their astronauts or whatever. So watch the video and pull some scriptures. Lord willing, the video will be edifying.
And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft, almost the bottom of the hour here. Let's keep it moving with more of these top headlines. As you know, it's been a busy week already, but want to get this story on your radar. It's a fun one here. Back out live, though, to the White House. So this is what we know, according to Politico. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy announcing expedited plans this week to build a nuclear reactor on the moon. This is the first major action by the former Fox News host as the interim administrator of NASA. So, Fox News correspondent Mike Emanuel with more on all of this.
Interim NASA Administrator and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy is expected to announce plans to put a nuclear reactor on the moon.
If we're going to be able to sustain life on the moon to then go to Mars, this technology is critically important.
Clear to proceed to CAT.
Experts say this is a 21st century space race with the United States rivals China and Russia. The first country to establish a nuclear reactor on the moon could block out others from setting up in the most desirable location.
Florida is the worst state to have car insurance. Why? Because a few big insurance.
Everyone's sort of headed to the lunar South Pole right now, where we think the most water ice is.
Liftoff. Air and Space Law Professor Michelle Hanlon says the U.S. must focus on this competition.
I don't think China is currently outpacing us, but I do think they can easily outpace us at this point. What we've seen from China is that they have a very steady pace in space, and they have the commitment to space.
This plan to put a nuclear reactor on the moon is considered by experts a natural progression of human exploration of space, something President Trump laid out in this year's inaugural address.
We will pursue our manifest destiny into the stars, launching American astronauts to plant the stars and stripes on the planet Mars.
So you notice how you said it was a natural, progression for humans, but ultimately it's really just a natural progression for Esau. The spirit that the Lord put on them to exalt themselves to such high, statuses to where they believe that they're God. So they want to, try to inhabit things like the moon and over Mars and, ultimately everything.
It is expected that NASA will seek input from private industry over the next 2 months, with the expectation that China is seeking to put humans and a nuclear reactor on the moon in the next 5 years. In Washington, Mike Emanuel, Fox News.
Mike, thanks so much. In the meantime here, let's bring into the conversation to talk about this story. Patrick McClure there of Space Nukes, he joins me. Patrick, thanks for being with us. A lot of people are talking about this, and I just have to ask this. So NASA has talked about this for quite some time, but what Duffy is doing is setting an actual timetable to get this going. Why do we need a nuclear reactor on the moon?
So you need a nuclear reactor for several reasons. Mostly it's the way to keep your astronauts alive. It allows them to make oxygen, to make water. It will be very good for doing all kinds of science. And in many of the places where you would want to go on the moon, like where there may be ice, you're going to be in a deep crater where power is not going to be available from solar. So a nuclear reactor will be essential.
So that's the reason that they're giving, for the astronauts, water and stuff, energy and stuff on the moon. But we know ultimately that they're trying to prepare for the Lord. When He returns with His angels to put down Esau and to bring his judgment, his indignation.
So imbued in this conversation, is the subtext, is this just part of the race to beat China in so many of these aspects here, you think?
Yeah, I think it does play a role. We are in a competition with China and Russia. We do want to be one of those nations that goes to the stars and takes advantages of all the things the moon has to offer, not only including science, but potential resources that may be there to be extracted.
So according to Politico here, the Reactor Directive orders the agency to solicit industry proposals for a 100 kilowatt nuclear reactor to launch by 2030. They say this is a key consideration for astronauts' return to the lunar surface. NASA previously funded research into a 40 kilowatt reactor for use on the moon, with plans to have a reactor ready for launch by the early 2030s. How would this all work? How do you pull this off? How do you even get it there? Or do you have to build it there?
Well, no, actually, it will be sent as a complete unit. The United States government has been looking at this for decades. So there are a lot of designs that have been proposed. And we think actual 2030 is a very doable date.
See, and this is how, the devil speaks deceivingly, because, he says they've been looking at it for decades. In translation, they've been working on this for decades. Like they ain't just been looking at this. Now they decided to, okay, now we want to go forward with this plan. We should be done by 2030. Nah, we've been working on this, and our estimate, we might be done by 2030. But Lord willing, they don't even have that much time left. As Apostle Tahar be saying, we counting down the months till their end, man. Lord willing.
So Patrick, I also have to ask this. I think for viewers coming to this story, when you think of a nuclear reactor, you think any energy reactor, it produces and provides energy for us to consume. We wouldn't be using this on the moon, right?
You wouldn't actually. It would be used to keep astronauts alive, it could provide power to a lot of things. On the moon, most things are going to need heat to stay alive because of the extreme cold. We're going to have actual things there that actually are going to need a lot of power, like to turn ice into potential fuel, maybe to do some mining, maybe to run experiments. So a lot of things a reactor could do for us.
So I think you know more than most. NASA always kind of faces some of these budget cuts. Is NASA up to the task? Are they going to have the funding to really see this through to this launch date, this aim of 2030? Do you think they have it in them?
Yeah, I think that's the great thing about what Administrator Duffy has done is he's made this a priority. If you look at where I think Congress wants to go with some budget items, I think this will be a priority, and I think that will help NASA achieve its goal.
Patrick, before we let you go here, what other thoughts do you have about this project? This is going to take a while. Is the backing there? Obviously, it's there with the Trump administration, but for folks just coming to this story, what more do they need to know about it? Is it worth it? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, we believe this is a very good thing. Anytime an administrator makes something like this a priority, it can be very good to help drive technology forward. So all in all, we see this as a very good sign and a very positive step by the administration.
All right, Patrick McClure there with Space Nukes. Patrick, thanks so much for your time. Talk soon.
Thank you for having me.
All right, in the meantime here, wanted to get that story on your radar. Back out live there to the White House. Well, speaking of Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, as you know, maybe you forgot, right now he is the interim administrator of NASA. Well, he did appear on the Fox News channel just tonight on the program The Ingram Angle, hosted by Laura Ingram. She asked him about this very same initiative. Let's watch this.
And Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. Mr. Secretary, great to see you. Now, I think a lot of people who saw this headline were skeptical. How are we going to do this? And again, why is this so important?
So
First off, it's a little bit of clickbait for liberals, and they were saying we're going to have nuclear warheads on the moon, and they just misrepresented the story. You mentioned that Trump brought this up in Trump 1. Joe Biden was studying this during his administration as well, and so enough of the studies, hundreds of millions of dollars. Let's move, Laura. So on the moon, I don't think a lot of people realize there's ice. Ice means water. We do have some solar, but if you want sustainable life on the moon, you need an energy source. So we're going to bring fission to the moon's surface to power our base. It makes complete sense. Now, some might say, well, the launch is somewhat complicated, right? These are not active. They're not live. When we launch them into space, we can do it safely. By the way, we have submarines and aircraft carriers that operate on nuclear energy as well. But this is a key component. If we're going to get to the moon and then get to the Mars, we're going to have to figure this technology out. And again, we have to beat the Russians, the Chinese, I think, to get to the moon first. If you lead in space, you lead on Earth.
Now, you want to expedite it to 2030. So the goal is by 2030, which is in less than 5 years, we're going to have energy production capability on the lunar surface?
That's what we want. So right now we have the Artemis program. So we've sent one unmanned mission to the moon and back. The next one is going to go in the first part of next year, a manned mission out and around the moon. And then a year after that, we're going to land back on the moon. We'll stay for 6 days. Last time we only stayed for 3. And then from there, we want to start bringing assets to the moon for future astronauts. When they get there, they can start to deploy those assets, whether it's, our bubble or our whatever we're going to use to house our astronauts, and then turn on our energy source. And again, this is so important. The moon is complicated, but even more complicated is Mars. And if we don't start this process, the Chinese aren't stopping, the Russians aren't stopping. We have to push forward. And what's great about Donald Trump is he doesn't live in a box. He doesn't have to play by any rules. He sees opportunity. He sees what America can do, and he goes for it. That's the kind of president he is, and so he's unleashed us to push this priority forward as opposed to out of the lab. Let's get into reality.
Well, will there be tariffs involved on anything made on the moon? That's a joke, sorry. That's a total joke. Sean, I have to ask you, Mr. Secretary, sorry. Now, you're transportation secretary, which I used to work there, as you know, as a speechwriter. But that's a big job. And now you're doing this. Marco Rubio's wearing multiple hats. When do you sleep, sir?
It's a great question, Laura. So listen, I have a great team. Look at what we did with air traffic control. We built Newark, new lines, tested it 2 months, got it going. We are rolling full steam ahead at DOT. The NASA needs a leader. We can't wait a week or a month or a year to make sure we start moving the moon priority forward. We fall further behind. So I'm able to navigate both ships without losing one beat. And so again, I'm honored the president thought of me for this role, and I'm going to fill here and stay here until the next administrator is nominated and put into position.
All right, Mr. Secretary, we look forward to all of this. Thank you.
Okay, so wanted to show you that clip there on the Ingram angle tonight on the Fox News channel. Transportation Secretary and interim NASA Administrator Sean Duffy talking about NASA's plans to put a lunar reactor there on the moon.
$5 a day, invest.
Okay, so yeah, they were asked why, right? And what was the excuse they gave? The race with Russia, China, as far as astronauts provide energy, if we want to soon be able to inhabit the moon, we're going to need energy there, water, things of that nature. But the end goal, which we know is what they're trying to prepare for the Lord when he returns. They've been seeing, all the, the objects, quote unquote, in space, deep space. Recently, wasn't there like a 7-mile object, something that they've spotted? Yeah, but pretty much, the same reason they need that for is the same reason that they needed the Space Force. Because why would you need a Space Force, right? That Space Force, hold on, search it up. U.S. Space Force. The U.S. Space Force is the 6th and newest branch of the U.S. Armed Forces, established in 2019. Its primary mission is to protect U.S. and allied interests in space. Protect them from what? And to provide space capabilities to the joint forces, the space force is responsible for organizing, training, and equipping personnel to achieve these goals, right? And you could say, oh, they're providing protection from asteroids and stuff of that nature, but why would it, if that's the case, why would it need to be, you know, a new branch of the military, pretty much? Armed forces? Armed forces, also known as the military, are primarily used to protect a nation from external threats and maintain its security, right? Because this devil knows that the Lord will be coming, you know, soon, Lord willing, you know, to destroy this place, you know, and they're going to try to fight back. And that's why they got that space force. You know, that's why they want to put a nuclear reactor on the moon, to provide energy for them and whatever they need. So, you know, what I did is I went on chat, you know, and I asked them, I said, what are possible uses for a nuclear reactor in space, right? Nuclear reactors in space can serve a variety of critical functions that chemical or solar-based systems struggle to meet, especially for deep space or long duration missions. Here are the most prominent uses. Power generation for spacecraft and bases. A deep space missions, solar panels become ineffective far from the sun, beyond Mars, but nuclear reactors can provide consistent, high output electricity regardless of distance, right? Useful for missions to Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, or beyond, like Voyager, New Horizons. So, you know, they're pretty much through technological means trying to acquire, you know, what the Lord's going to give to his people. Lunar or Martian bases. Surface habitats need continuous power for life support, heating, communication, and experiments. Solar power is limited by night cycles, thus in eclipses, especially on the moon, which has a 14-day nights. A small modular nuclear fission reactor, like NASA's Killer Power project, could reliably support long-term operations. Propulsion systems. Nuclear thermal propulsion, NTP, uses a nuclear reactor to heat a propellant hydrogen and expel it to produce thrust. Scientific instruments and experiments. Power-intensive science payloads like ground-penetrating radar, large telescopes, or laboratories need steady, high-power supply. Nuclear reactors can enable advanced instrumentation in distant moons or planets where solar power is insufficient. Here, pretty much to the main point, right? Defense and strategic applications. Military or security satellites in theoretical or classified projects may use nuclear reactors for high-power radar or sensors, directed energy systems, long-duration reconnaissance missions where solar panels may not provide stealth or sufficient power. These uses are speculative or controversial due to international treaties and risk of weaponizing space. Space manufacturing and industry. Orbital factories may eventually require large amounts of electricity. Nuclear reactors would allow industrial scale processes in orbit or on the moon/Mars without relying on vast solar arrays. Planetary defense missions, right? A nuclear-powered spacecraft could carry out high-energy missions such as deflecting or destroying asteroids, you know, as well as trying to shoot down a UFO, performing long-duration surveillance of potential threats, right? You know, so, you know, they're trying to better themselves for when the Lord returns, you know, because they really think they're going to be able to fight back, but they're not. So let's hit some scriptures. First one to bring up is Obadiah chapter 1, start at verse 3. Here it says, Edom will be humbled. Obadiah chapter 1 verse 3. The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, right? The pride of thine heart hath conceived thee. Thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, right? Because Edom, you know, Esau, what? They used to be a base man, you know, cavemen, so to speak. Thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, you know, going into not only, you know, how they would build their clefts in the rocks, you know, in before times, but now, what do you see here in cities, everywhere? Most of their buildings are what, like skyscrapers, you know, just story on story on story on story. World Trade Centers, stuff like that. How it's pretty much just a, what, habitation is high. They're just building up, up, and up. You know, that's how they build. That saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Right? So going once again, going into that pride of theirs. Who wanna bring me down? You know, ain't nobody can touch me. Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, right? Which was the eagle was like a bird with a high altitude, one of the highest flying birds. And though thou set thy nest among the stars, right? And what did the guy say? He said something about let's see if we can go pull it up again. I can't remember exactly quite.
Sit for 1 year, and you could have $1,900, $5 a day.
Mike,
I think it was
Actually, it will be.
They are legally stealing from you.
Wow.
My husband lost his 20-year job as a sheriff after
Another ad
a clip
we just
of
got off
him
one.
exposing the insurance.
Sent as a complete unit. The United States government has been looking at this for decades. So there are.
any energy reactor, it produces and provides energy for us to consume. We wouldn't be using this on the moon, right?
You wouldn't actually, it would be used to keep astronauts alive, but it could provide power to a lot of things. On the moon, most things are going to need heat to stay alive because of the extreme cold. We're going to have actual things there that actually are going to need a lot of power, like to turn ice into potential fuel, maybe to do some mining, maybe to run experiments. So a lot of things a reactor could do for us.
So I think you know more than most. NASA always kind of faces some of these budget cuts. Is NASA up to the task? Are they going to have the funding to really see this through to this launch date?
Administrator Duffy has done is he's made this a priority. If you look at where I think Congress wants to go with some budget items, I think this will be a priority, and I think that will help NASA achieve its goal.
You know, Patrick, before just coming to this story, what more?
A priority. It can be very good to help drive technology forward. So all in all, we see this as a very good sign and a very positive step by the administration.
All right, Patrick McClure there with Space Nukes. Patrick, thanks so much for your time. Talk soon.
Thank you for having me.
All right, in the meantime here, wanted to get that story on your radar. Is setting
live. It allows them to make oxygen, to make like where there may be ice, you're going to be.
So imbued.
We are in a competition with China and Russia. We do want to be one of those nations that goes to the stars and takes advantages of all the things. We do want to be one of those nations that goes to the stars and takes advantages of all the things the moon has to offer.
Right. So basically, they want to go over there and corrupt the moon, as if they already corrupt the Earth enough. Right. But he says they want to go into the stars. Right. So once again, reading verse 4, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and thou set thy nest among the stars. Right. And not only what he just was speaking about, but they also already have these satellites up there in space, these space stations. Thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Right. So the Lord, no matter what they do, no matter how proud they are, they exalt themselves, the Lord's gonna bring all of that down when he returns. But they're going to try a fighting against the Lord when he returns, that we read. So let's go from here, the book of Revelations, chapter 17. Start at verse 14. Victory for the Lamb, right? These shall make war with the Lamb, that Lamb being who? Yahushai. And the Lamb shall overcome them, right? Because the Lord, he's going to defeat them easily. Like, it's not even going to be a competition. For he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, those 10 horns being the EU, NATO, America's allies, these shall hate the whore, right? And why is that? Because what? America boasts against these other nations. Daniel 7:20 lets us know how her neck is more stout than her fellows, something along those lines, roughly paraphrasing. But pretty much that, going into that pride, they're arrogant and proud even at their own allies, right? But their allies are going to turn against them. America's allies only deal with America because of what? Not only because that's the will of the Lord, but the benefits that come with dealing with America, laying in bed with that whore. Here, Revelations verse 18:3. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Now her, being Babylon the Great, America the great whore, have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, right? Her system. And the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies, right? So, these nations, they've gotten rich off America. That's also a reason why they still cahoot with America, these agreements, the benefits that they get from doing so. So going back to verse 17. And he saith unto me, verse 16, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Right, and this is going into what? The nuclear, the missiles, right? Because not only will Russia, their allies, China, their allies, launch missiles at America, but America's own allies will launch them too, because the Lord's going to put the Spirit on them to do so. Verse 17, for the Most High has put in their hearts to fulfill his will, right, and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of the Most High shall be fulfilled, right? And the women which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Right? Once again, if you be real with yourself and ask who's reigning over the kings of the earth, you would know what that great city is. It's America. Now they're starting to fall, but that's because their kingdom is coming to an end. This Rome is coming to an end. But the main point again here being what? These shall make war with the Lamb. So they're going to fight against Yahushai, and that's why they're really they want to place a nuclear reactor on the moon to help against that. Now if we jump back a couple chapters, here verse 12, verse 7, the angel Michael, right? And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, right? And Michael, the head angel, the archangel, and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, right? And that dragon being Esau, and the dragon fought and his angels, right? Going into, their militaries, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found anymore in heaven, right? Because when they make war against the Lord, and his angels, they're not prevailing. It's going to be completely one-sided. The Lord's going to wipe them out. That's why it says, neither was their place found anymore in heaven. Now, here, let's go to the book of Jeremiah, chapter 50. Touching more on the destruction of Babylon, destruction of America. We start here at verse 24. Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 24. I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon, and thou wast not aware, thou art found and also caught, because thou hast striven against the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Abishai. The Lord hath opened his armory, and hath brought forth the weapons of his indignation, those missiles. For this is the work of the Lord, power of hosts in the land of the Chaldeans. Right, so, the Lord said he hath opened his armory, right? So, these missiles belong to the Lord. Yeah, y'all might have built them, but the Lord put the spirit on y'all to do so, right? So when y'all launch them, when he puts the spirit on y'all to launch them, he can use them for his purposes, right? Which is going to be to what? Destroy Babylon the Great, destroy America, to wipe it off the face of this earth. And because he wants to destroy that place. Verse 26. Come against her from the utmost borders, open her storehouses, cast her up as heaps, and destroy her utterly. Let nothing of her be left, right? Because, after the missiles do what they do to this place, not only the missiles, but the chariots of the Lord shooting their fire, their laser beams, everything, disintegrating just everything, right? It says, let nothing of her be left. It's going to become like a desert place, a habitation of devils, habitation for the beasts of the earth. We can get that real quick. Here, Revelation chapter 18, verse 2. And he cried, we start at verse 1, Babylon is fallen. All right, so this is after, the fall of Babylon. And after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, America is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. I spelled foul wrong. It's lucky, but we found it. Right, in the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Right, going into what, the scavengers, I believe, the birds that, the scavengers, those type of birds like vultures and stuff, right? It's going to become home to those type of animals, because this entire place is going to be completely wiped off the planet, pretty much. You won't be able to tell where America began and where it ended. It's going to become a desert-like place. So going back, it's Jeremiah 50, verse 27, right? Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 27. Slay all her bullocks, let them go down to the slaughter. Woe unto them, for their day is come, the time of their visitation. The voice of them that flee and escape out of the land of Babylon, to declare in Zion the vengeance of the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Abishai, our power, the vengeance of his temple. The vengeance of his temple being Israel, the vengeance of the Israelites. The Lord is going to come, and pay back for his people. Call together the archers against Babylon, all ye that bend the bow. Camp against it round about, let none thereof escape. Recompense her according to her work, according to all that she hath done. Do unto her, for she hath been proud against the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Abishai, against the Holy One of Israel. Right, so it says, call together the archers against Babylon, all that bend the bow. Meaning what? All the, the places, the countries, the lands, who harbor those missiles, who have nuclear capability, camp against it round about, let none thereof escape, recompense her according to our work. All of them are going to be sending those over to America to destroy this place. The Lord's going to put the spirit on them to launch those missiles, at America. Do unto her, for she hath been proud against the Lord, against the Holy One of Israel. And notice how it keeps hitting at that pride. The Lord hates the pride of men, because men should not be proud. Here it is, you're a man. What are you being proud for? You can't live forever. You're not divine. You know how easy it is for a man to die? Men can die accidentally. Like, you can trip and die. What are you being proud for? Like, it's crazy. We know pride is the beginning of sin. Ecclesiasticus chapter 10, I believe. Let's see. Right, Ecclesiastes chapter 10 verse 13. For pride is the beginning of sin, and he that hath it shall pour out abomination. And therefore the Lord brought upon them strange calamities and overthrew them utterly. What does he say here? Cast her up as heaps and destroy her utterly. Let nothing of her be left. Therefore, verse 30, therefore shall her young men fall in the streets, and all her men of war shall be cut off in that day, saith the Lord Yahweh Bashai. Behold, I am against thee, O thou most proud, saith the Lord power of hosts, for thy day is come, the time that I will visit thee. That's why they've been seeing all these quote unquote objects in space. The Lord said he's going to visit this place, and it's soon. And the most proud shall stumble and fall, and none shall raise him up. And I will kindle a fire in his cities, and it shall devour all round about him. And once again, what is that fire? Let's go from here. Book of Malachi, chapter 4. Start at verse 1. Final admonition. Final admonition. What did we just read? The Lord was going to open up his armory. Malachi chapter 4 verse 1. For behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, all that do wickedly, shall be stubble. And the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord Yahweh Bashim Abishai of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch. Right, because they're going to be destroyed utterly. Right, it says shall burn them up, because once again, the missiles, that nuclear fire, but as well as the chariots, the lasers and fire from the chariots, because the Lord and his angels are going to be here tearing this place up, man. And you're not going to want to take part in that. Verse 2, but unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings, Yahweh Shai, and ye shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall. Right, but it says, but unto you that fear my name, right? Because the names are important. You have to truly fear and believe in the names. Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. He is, or he exists in the name of Yahweh Shai. He deliverer, or the deliverer. Those names are important because it's really power in those names. But unto those that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings. You're going to want that healing. You're going to want to be found in that book of life. You're going to want to be delivered through the destruction. You don't want to become a partaker of this judgment. But also, it says, but unto you that fear my name, because what? Fear is the beginning of wisdom. Once you gain that fear, you believe, trust in the names, this truth, right? which will lead you in the ways of righteousness, you know, to inherit eternal life, to be found worthy in that book of life, be written in that book of life, you know, to be saved out of the judgment. Grab that while we're at it. It's Proverbs 9 and 10. The fear of the Lord Yahweh Bashem Abishai is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. Right? Because once you gain that wisdom and fear, you know, that fear prompts you to walk in the ways of righteousness, to obey the Lord, to do what He asks, and that you may be saved. You know, we're going back. In Malachi chapter 4 verse 3, and ye shall tread down the wicked, for they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet in the day that I shall do this, saith the Lord Yahweh Bashem Abishai of hosts. Right, and that's ultimately what's coming to Esau, you know, to America, to this world, you know, the wicked of this world. And when the Lord returns, it won't be a pleasant sight for those who don't fear, you know, His name, the true names, and believe in those names. So I think I'm getting here. You know, once more, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai. I'm going to leave the video. I have a link to the video in the description. But double honors to the apostles and elders of the great millstone. Shalom to the hopeful elect.